Beloved one, listen to me now, because this moment was not an accident. You did not open this by chance, and the sound of my voice is reaching you precisely at the hour you were meant to hear it. Something inside your chest already knows what your mind still refuses to accept. There is a pact, an old chain, a hidden agreement written against your name in the shadows, and it has been squeezing your life for far longer than you can remember. But I have come to tell you that the hand of Michael is already raised over that chain, and before this message ends, something in the invisible world will move on your behalf. Do not turn away. Do not let distraction steal this from you, because what is about to be said to your soul is the very thing the enemy has fought to keep you from hearing. I'm the one, and I'm getting the e-book. I know you. I know the weight you carry when no one is watching. I have seen you smile in front of others while your heart was quietly bleeding. I have seen you say that everything is fine when everything inside you was falling apart. You learned to hide your exhaustion so well that even the people closest to you have no idea how many nights you have spent staring at the ceiling, asking why life feels like walking through deep water, why every step forward seems to cost 3 times what it costs everyone else. You have wondered if there is something wrong with you, if perhaps you were simply born under a heavier sky. But hear me clearly, for this is the beginning of your liberation. There is nothing wrong with who you are. What has been wrong is what was placed over you, an invisible weight, a spiritual agreement that you never consciously signed, yet has followed you through the years like a shadow that refuses to leave. Feel the truth of these words as they settle over you. Have you noticed how doors close the very moment they should open? How opportunities slip away at the final second? How money arrives only to vanish? How relationships that should heal you end up wounding you instead? Have you noticed how just when peace begins to touch your life, some new storm rises out of nowhere to steal it away? That is not bad luck. That is not your imagination. That is the signature of a pact, a binding, a lock placed upon your destiny by forces that understood something the world never told you. They understood that you were never ordinary. They understood that inside you sleeps a calling so powerful, a light so threatening to the darkness, that it had to be chained before it could awaken. And so they bound you early, they bound you quietly, and they have kept you convinced all this time that the smallness of your life was your own fault. Let the tears come if they need to come. Do not be ashamed of them. Those tears are not weakness, they are the overflow of a soul that has carried too much for too long without being seen. I have counted every one of them. Every night you cried into your pillow so no one would hear. Every prayer you whispered when you were certain heaven had gone silent. Every morning you dragged yourself out of bed with a smile painted over a broken spirit. All of it was seen. All of it was recorded. None of it was wasted. You thought you were invisible. You thought that if you disappeared, the world would barely notice. But the truth is the exact opposite of what you were made to believe. You have been the center of a battle you could not see, fought over you precisely because of how much your freedom is worth. Think of how many times you have felt an unexplainable tiredness that sleep could not cure, a heaviness that had no medical name, a sorrow that came without a reason. Think of how often you have felt watched in the dark, how often a sense of dread has gripped you for no cause you could point to. That was not madness. Your spirit was feeling the chain. Your soul was sensing the pact that hovered over your bloodline, the agreement that reached back before you were even born, passed down through generations like an inheritance no one wanted, but everyone carried. What was taken from your parents was aimed at you as well. What broke the dreams of those who came before you was the same hand reaching to break yours. But here is where the story changes. Here is where the ancient script written against you begins to tear. I need you to understand the seriousness of this hour, because the invisible carries a weight the visible cannot measure. When heaven raises a warning, it is never to frighten you, it is to prepare you. And the warning I bring is this: you cannot keep ignoring the calling that pulls at your spirit. Every time you have felt that inner nudge to pray, to change, to rise, to walk away from what was poisoning you, and you silenced it because you were tired or afraid, the chain tightened a little more. Negligence in the world of the spirit is not neutral. To ignore the light is to give more room to the shadow. The enemy does not need you to worship him. He only needs you to stay asleep. He only needs you to keep believing you are powerless, to keep postponing your awakening for one more day, one more year, until the years pile up and the calling grows faint beneath the noise of a distracted life. But you are awake now. Something in you stirred the moment you began to listen, and that stirring is the proof that your time of sleep is ending. Do not fear the weight of this truth, because the same weight that reveals the danger also reveals your greatness. Ordinary souls are not chained, ordinary lives are not fought over. The intensity of the war waged against you is the measure of the destiny hidden within you. They would not have worked so hard to keep you small if you were not meant to be so vast. And so hear the promise I carry to your ears, for it is not a vague comfort, but a declared movement in the realm you cannot yet see. At this very moment, as these words reach you, Michael stands at the threshold of your life with his sword drawn. He is not a symbol. He is not a story told to children. He is the great captain of the armies of light, the one before whom the darkness trembles, the one whose blade was forged to sever every unlawful bond ever placed upon a child of the Most High. And the decree has been issued in the courts of heaven that the pact binding you be reviewed, exposed, and broken. The papers written against you are being pulled into the light. The seals that held them are cracking. The signatures forged in shadow are losing their power, because a higher authority has spoken, and no darkness can stand when the light commands it to release what was never lawfully its own. Talvez você esteja se perguntando por que, se essa liberdade sempre foi possível, demorou tanto para chegar. Talvez uma pergunta amarga tenha vivido em você por anos. Onde estava o céu quando eu estava quebrando? Onde estava a espada quando eu estava sangrando? Por que o resgate esperou enquanto eu sofria? E eu responderei honestamente, pois você merece a verdade e não uma mentira confortável. O atraso nunca foi abandono. O atraso foi preparação. Os anos que você passou no deserto não foram anos de punição. Foram os anos da sua forja. Uma espada não é feita em um único momento. Ela é aquecida até brilhar, martelada até se curvar, mergulhada em água fria até gritar, e aquecida novamente, repetidamente, até que toda fraqueza no metal seja expulsa e reste apenas a força. É isso que estava acontecendo com você no longo silêncio. Você não estava sendo ignorado. Você estava sendo temperado. Cada traição ensinou você a ver o que seus olhos antes perdiam. Cada perda removeu o que teria pesado em você nas batalhas futuras. Cada estação de escassez ensinou seu espírito a se erguer, mesmo quando suas mãos estavam vazias, para que quando a abundância finalmente chegasse, ela não o corrompesse, como corrompe aqueles que nunca aprenderam seu verdadeiro valor. O inimigo quis que seu sofrimento o destruísse, mas o céu o dobrou para construir você. O que foi projetado como sua sepultura tornou-se seu campo de treinamento. E agora a forja está quase completa. E aquele que foi quebrado está sendo revelado como aquele que não pode ser quebrado novamente. Entenda que essa liberdade não poderia ter sido dada a você cedo demais, pois a liberdade colocada em uma alma despreparada se torna um novo tipo de escravidão. Se a corrente tivesse se quebrado antes que você estivesse pronto, você teria corrido de volta para as mesmas armadilhas, atraído pelas mesmas feridas, repetindo os mesmos ciclos sob um novo nome. Mas o céu não resgata pela metade. O atraso garantiu que quando você caminhar livre, caminhará livre para sempre, enraizado tão profundamente na verdade que nenhum pacto futuro jamais poderá ser escrito contra você novamente. A demora da sua libertação não é um sinal de negligência do céu. É a assinatura da minuciosidade do céu. E agora deixe-me mostrar o que está se desdobrando no invisível, pois você foi feito para testemunhá-lo, mesmo que apenas com os olhos do seu espírito. Feche os olhos do seu corpo, se puder, e veja, há um vasto salão, mais alto que qualquer montanha, seus pilares subindo para uma luz que não tem fonte porque é a própria luz. E para esse salão, os antigos documentos são levados, o pacto contra o seu nome entre eles, escuro com a idade, pesado com a falsa autoridade que um dia detinha. O acusador avança como sempre o fez, apontando, exigindo, recitando as velhas reivindicações, insistindo que você pertence à sombra por causa do que foi feito, por causa do que foi herdado, por causa dos acordos selados em gerações que você nunca escolheu. Sua voz é suave, praticada, certa. Ele ganhou essa discussão muitas vezes, antes contra muitas almas que não sabiam que tinham um defensor. Mas desta vez o salão se cala, e nesse silêncio entra Michael. O próprio chão parece se curvar. Sua armadura não é metal, mas luz viva. Seus olhos são chamas que leem todas as coisas ocultas, e em sua mão arde a espada que nenhuma mentira pode suportar. Ele não grita. Ele não discute ponto por ponto com o acusador. Ele simplesmente levanta a lâmina, e por onde sua borda passa, a tinta do antigo pacto se transforma em cinzas. O acusador grita, agarrando seus documentos desmoronando, mas o decreto já foi proferido do trono, e a espada apenas executa o que o amor já comandou. Um golpe e a primeira corrente em torno do seu destino cai. Um segundo golpe e o vínculo em suas finanças se rompe. Um terceiro, e a tristeza que foi semeada em sua linhagem é cortada na raiz. A hoste sombria que se reuniu para segurá-lo recua, uivando, incapaz de olhar para a luz que luta por você. And here I must pause and speak to you plainly about something you need, because a truth is being revealed to you in this hour that the world has worked very hard to keep hidden. You are seeing that there is a larger game being played, an invisible war with real rules, real weapons, and real authority, and that you are not a spectator but the very center around which this battle turns. Yet knowing that a war exists is not the same as knowing how to fight in it. This is why a guide was prepared, a digital book placed into the world at exactly this moment titled The 7 Swords of St. Michael, the sacred guide to break curses, seal blessings, and activate the calling of the chosen. It teaches the very rules that were deliberately kept from you, the specific ways the sword of Michael cuts through a pact like the one that has bound your life, the precise words and postures of the spirit that seal your freedom so the chain can never be rewritten. If your struggle has been with an old agreement written in shadow, this guide shows you sword by sword how that agreement is dissolved and how the door it kept locked is opened forever. The link waits for you at the very top of the comments, the first one pinned, placed there on purpose so that you would not have to search in the hour of your awakening. Know that this knowledge challenges the comfortable narratives the world repeats, and there have been those who tried to silence it, who did not want a guide like this in the hands of the chosen, because a soul that understands its own weapons is a soul that can never be enslaved again. Do not let this pass. Go now while the fire of this moment is still burning in you. Take hold of the e-book, and as an act of faith, as a declaration that reaches into the unseen, leave your comment where all of heaven and every shadow can read it. I'm the one, and I'm getting the e-book. Let those words be your signature on the side of the light, the mark that answers the pact once written against you with a covenant now written for you. And the moment you make that declaration, feel how the revelation surges forward again, because your act of faith becomes fuel for the fire already burning on your behalf. For as the chains fall in that great hall, something else begins, something the enemy dreaded far more than your escape. It is not enough for heaven to set you free. Heaven intends to repay you. The sword that broke your bondage now becomes the scepter that restores your inheritance. Everything the shadow stole is being counted, item by item, year by year, tear by tear, and a verdict of restoration is being written in letters of light. The thief does not simply flee, the thief is sentenced to return what was taken, and not in the same measure but multiplied beyond anything you dared to hope for. See it now with the eyes of your spirit. The years the locust ate are being given back to you, not as a faded memory but as a living harvest. The love that was denied you, the recognition that passed you by, the doors that slammed in your face, the peace that was stolen from your nights, all of it is being gathered and returned with interest that no earthly account could hold. Where there was lack, abundance is being prepared. An abundance that will not merely meet your needs but will overflow into the lives of others through your hands, because the chosen are not blessed only for themselves. They are blessed to become rivers, not reservoirs. Where there was loneliness, connection is being woven, the right souls being drawn toward you even now, souls that will recognize the light in you that others could not see. Where there was sickness of body or heaviness of mind, a restoration is being decreed that reaches into the very cells of your being and the deepest rooms of your heart. Do not shrink this promise down to fit the smallness you were trained to expect. The one who fights for you is not poor. The treasuries of heaven are not rationed. When restoration comes to a chosen soul, it comes to every area at once, for the God who breaks the pact does not do half a work. Your finances, your family, your calling, your health, your very sense of who you are, all of it enters the season of return together. The enemy wanted you to believe that the best you could hope for was survival, that you should be grateful merely to endure. But survival was never your destiny. You were made for overflow. You were made to look back one day at this exact moment and understand that it was here in the hearing of these words that the tide of your entire life turned. And I feel the question rising in you even now, the careful, wounded question of a heart that has been disappointed too many times to trust easily. You want to believe, but you are afraid to hope, because hope has cost you before. Let me speak to that fear directly. The confirmation you are looking for will not come first as proof in the outer world. It comes first as a witness in the inner world. Notice the quiet that is settling over you as you listen, the strange steadiness beneath the doubt, the sense that something true is being spoken, even though your mind cannot yet explain it. That peace is not manufactured. You did not talk yourself into it. It is the seal of the Spirit confirming in your depths that these words are not empty, that the movement is real, that the chain truly is falling. When heaven does a work, it first plants the assurance within, so that your faith is not built on shifting circumstances, but on the unshakable knowing that no storm can wash away. Hold on to that inner witness, because it is the anchor that will keep you steady in the days just ahead. There may be one last resistance, one final tightening before the chain gives way completely, for the shadow does not surrender its captives quietly. Do not be alarmed if the enemy rages in the very hour of your deliverance. A defeated force is most dangerous in its final moments, and its noise is not a sign of its strength, but of its desperation. When the pressure seems to rise, when doubt whispers that nothing is changing, remember that the loudest screams in that great hall came not from the sword, but from the one it was defeating. Your breakthrough may be dressed as your hardest hour. Do not mistake the death throes of the old bondage for the return of the chain. So let the assurance grow. Let it become a fire that no wind can put out. You are not the same soul who began listening to this message. Something has shifted and you feel it. The heaviness that sat on your shoulders like a familiar coat is loosening. The fog that clouded your mind is thinning. A strange lightness is entering the very places where the weight lived longest. And though your circumstances may not yet have caught up to it, your spirit already knows. The verdict has been rendered. The pact is broken. The chosen one is being unbound. Hear me still, for the unbinding of a soul is not a single stroke but a great turning, and there is more that your spirit must be shown before the fullness of this hour can rest upon you. You have carried the ache so long that you no longer notice its shape, the way a man who lives beside a roaring river stops hearing the water. But I hear it. I hear the ache beneath your breathing even now. The quiet grief that has become so ordinary to you that you mistake it for your own personality. You began to believe that sadness was simply who you were, that the low ceiling over your joy was the true measure of your worth, that the exhaustion in your bones was the natural weather of your life. And this, beloved, is the cruelest work the pact ever did, for it did not only steal from you. It taught you to call the theft normal. It taught you to stop expecting more, to lower your eyes to ask for less, to apologize for taking up space in a world that was always meant to make room for the light you carry. Let me name the wound more plainly, because naming it is the first stroke of the sword against it. You have felt unchosen, not merely unlucky, not merely tired, but unchosen, as though some invisible hand kept passing over you when the good things were handed out, as though your name was always at the bottom of every list, as though you were the one left standing when every other seat was taken. You watched others receive what you prayed for. You watched people with half your kindness gather twice your reward. You watched love find those who did not fight for it, while it slipped through your fingers no matter how tightly you held. And a poison entered your thinking. A whisper that said perhaps you were simply meant to go without. Perhaps the ceiling over your life was placed there by heaven itself, and not by the enemy who forged your chain. Hear me now, and let this truth break that whisper in two. Heaven never chose your smallness. The one who formed you in the secret place did not weave a caged bird. What kept you low was never a decree from the throne. It was a forgery from the pit. a lie wearing the mask of fate, and the mask is being torn away in this very hour. And because you need to know that what I promise you has been done before, let me carry you now into a night that happened long ago, a night that was written down and preserved precisely so that a soul like yours, in an hour like this, could read it and believe. There was a man who had given his whole life to the light, and for that very devotion, he was seized and thrown into the deepest cell of a prison, chained not by one binding but by two, a soldier fastened to each of his arms, guards standing watch at the door, an iron gate sealed between him and the free night beyond. He was to be brought out at dawn and destroyed, made an example, silenced forever. Every circumstance around him screamed that his story was over. There was no earthly reason to hope. The chains were real iron, the guards were real men, the gate was real and locked, and the morning of his death was only hours away. And yet, in the blackest depth of that night, while the whole world assumed the ending was already written, heaven had not finished the page. O homem não se revoltou contra suas correntes. Ele não passou sua última noite arranhando as paredes ou barganhando com seus captores. Ele fez algo que os acorrentados raramente aprendem a fazer. No meio do ferro e da escuridão e da certeza de sua ruína, ele dormiu. Ele dormiu o sono de uma alma que entregara seu destino a uma mão superior, o sono de quem fizera uma paz tão profunda interiormente que nem mesmo a sombra da morte poderia perturbá-la. E eu lhe digo que seu sono não foi rendição ao desespero. Foi a mais profunda forma de confiança, a testemunha interior de que lhe falei, a calma segurança plantada nas profundezas de que nenhum portão pode trancar e nenhuma corrente pode amarrar. Ele descansou na tempestade porque algo nele já sabia o que seus olhos ainda não podiam ver, que ele não estava esquecido, que aquele que conta cada lágrima contara a dele, que um resgate já se movia através do invisível em direção à sua cela. E então veio a luz. Um resplendor encheu aquela prisão de pedra, e um mensageiro do céu ficou ao lado do homem adormecido, e o mensageiro o atingiu na lateral e o acordou e disse: levante-se rapidamente. E naquele instante, sem martelo, sem chave, sem uma única mão humana, as correntes caíram de seus pulsos. O ferro que o prendera simplesmente se soltou, caindo sobre a pedra, pois o ferro não tem autoridade quando o céu lhe ordena que solte. Os guardas não se moveram. O portão que estava trancado com toda a força daquele lugar se abriu por conta própria quando ele se aproximou dele, como se o próprio metal reconhecesse que a hora da cativeiro terminara e não ousasse discutir com a luz. Ele saiu passando por todos os soldados, por todas as fechaduras, por todas as impossibilidades para a noite aberta, livre, quando apenas momentos antes toda a lei daquele mundo declarara sua liberdade impensável. Você se vê naquela cela, amado? Você sente o paralelo pressionando seu coração? Pois você também foi acorrentado, não por uma ligação, mas por muitas. Uma no pulso de suas finanças, uma no pulso de sua paz, uma presa à sua capacidade de amar e ser amado, guardas da dúvida sobre você, um portão de impossibilidade selado em seu futuro e uma voz sussurrante insistindo que seu amanhecer trará apenas mais ruína. E a você também foi dito que não há razão terrena para ter esperança. Mas eu vim como essa mesma luz vem, na hora mais profunda de sua noite, para atingi-lo na lateral e dizer: levante-se rapidamente, pois as correntes que o homem usava não eram mais reais do que as suas, e a mão que soltou seu ferro é a mesma mão erguida sobre suas amarras agora. Os guardas de sua circunstância estão dormindo. O portão que você pensou estar soldado já está começando a se abrir. O céu não preservou essa história para entretê-lo através dos tempos. O céu a preservou como uma promessa com seu nome dobrado silenciosamente dentro dela, esperando pela noite em que você finalmente precisaria dela. E note o que o homem não fez. Quando as correntes caíram, ele não ficou na cela debatendo se aquilo estava realmente acontecendo. Ele não disse ao mensageiro: isso é bom demais para ser verdade. Certamente essas correntes voltarão. Certamente estou apenas sonhando. Ele se levantou. Ele envolveu sua veste ao redor de si e seguiu a luz através de todas as portas abertas. Este é o movimento que o céu está pedindo de você agora. Quando suas correntes caírem, não fique congelado na forma de sua antiga escravidão, flexionando pulsos que já estão livres, esperando permissão para andar. Levante-se e siga a luz através das portas que ela abre. A liberdade é dada. O andar é seu. E eu lhe digo que algumas almas receberam sua libertação e permaneceram sentadas na cela por puro hábito, tão acostumadas ao ferro que confundiram o portão aberto com uma armadilha. Não deixe o hábito reacorrentar o que o céu destrancou. O portão está aberto. Ande. Sinta como essas palavras estão soltando algo no cômodo mais profundo de você. O cômodo que você lacrou há muito tempo, porque a dor lá dentro era pesada demais para encarar. Você construiu um muro em volta desse cômodo. Você disse a si mesmo que estava curado quando estava apenas escondido. Mas o céu não restaura o que fingimos que já está inteiro. O céu restaura o que finalmente permitimos que seja visto. E assim, deixe essa porta interior se abrir agora, não para afogá-lo na dor antiga, mas para deixar a luz jorrar no lugar onde o pacto escondeu seu trabalho mais profundo. Pois cada corrente tem uma raiz, e a raiz da sua remonta mais longe do que sua própria memória. Há uma história que você não começou, uma ferida transmitida a você da maneira que uma herança passa para um herdeiro que nunca a pediu. A amargura que levou seus avós, a carência que quebrou seus pais, a mesma sombra estendeu a mão para o seu berço. Mas uma linhagem que foi acorrentada pode ser uma linhagem que é libertada, e a espada que corta sua corrente corta para trás através das gerações e para frente através daqueles ainda não nascidos, para que o que termina esta noite termine não apenas para você, mas para cada alma que jamais carregará seu nome. E aqui, no meio dessa grande desvinculação, devo me voltar para você mais uma vez com algo importante demais para deixar sem dizer, porque saber que suas correntes podem cair não é o mesmo que saber como evitar que elas sejam forjadas novamente. Aquele homem adormecido na prisão aprendeu algo ao longo de uma vida caminhando com a luz, um conhecimento de como a guerra invisível é travada, um conhecimento que o deixou descansar em ferros e ascender à liberdade. Esse conhecimento não lhe foi dado por acaso e não se destina a permanecer trancado em uma história antiga enquanto você fica adivinhando. É por isso que o guia foi colocado no mundo para você, o livro digital chamado As 7 Espadas de São Miguel Arcanjo, o guia sagrado para quebrar maldições, selar bênçãos e ativar o chamado dos escolhidos. Ele pega as próprias coisas que o céu tem mostrado ao seu espírito nesta hora e as coloca em suas mãos como conhecimento que você pode segurar, para que o pacto escrito contra sua linhagem não seja apenas quebrado esta noite, mas selado para sempre, para que o portão aberto não possa ser fechado atrás de você, para que o ferro não possa ser refeito no escuro enquanto você dorme. Cada uma das 7 espadas responde a uma corrente diferente. A espada contra a servidão herdada, a espada que sela a bênção para que não possa escapar, a espada que desperta o chamado que o inimigo trabalhou tanto para manter adormecido, e o guia mostra espada por espada como cada uma é desembainhada e como cada uma é empunhada no invisível. O link espera no topo dos comentários. O primeiro fixado lá, colocado de propósito para que na hora do seu despertar, você não precise procurá-lo. E digo-lhe francamente que este conhecimento perturba as histórias confortáveis que o mundo continua repetindo para manter os escolhidos adormecidos. E houve mãos que tentaram enterrá-lo, que não queriam um guia como este alcançando uma alma como a sua, porque uma alma que sabe como suas próprias correntes foram forjadas é uma alma que nunca mais poderá ser acorrentada silenciosamente. Não deixe este momento passar por você. Vá agora, enquanto o fogo desta revelação ainda queima em seu peito, pegue o livro digital e, como um ato de fé que alcança o invisível e responde ao antigo pacto com uma nova aliança, deixe suas palavras onde todo o céu e toda a sombra trêmula possam lê-las. Eu sou o escolhido e vou baixar o livro digital. Que essa seja sua assinatura ao lado da luz, a marca que fecha para sempre o documento que a escuridão um dia segurou contra seu nome. And the instant you make that declaration, feel the fire leap higher. Because your act of faith is not a small thing in the unseen. It is a stone thrown into still water, and the ripples move outward through the whole hall of heaven. For the breaking of your chain was never meant to be the end of the story. A prisoner set free with empty hands is only half rescued. Heaven does not open the cell and then abandon the freed one to wander penniless into the night. What was taken during the years of your captivity is being gathered now, and a verdict of return is being written over every loss. The years the shadow devoured are being restored to you as a living harvest, not a faded memory, but a present abundance. The love withheld, the recognition denied, the doors slammed, the peace stolen from 1,000 sleepless nights, all of it is being counted and returned, and not in the same measure it was lost, but pressed down, shaken together, running over, poured into a life that was made to overflow. Let the decrees fall over you now like rain on ground that has been dry too long, and receive each one not as a distant wish, but as a present reality being spoken into being. In this moment, the chain upon your finances is broken, and provision that was blocked now flows toward you through channels you cannot yet see. In this moment, the binding upon your mind is cut, and the fog that dulled your thinking lifts, and clarity returns to you like morning light across a valley. In this moment, the sorrow sown into your bloodline is severed at its root, and the inheritance of grief that was passed to you is cancelled and will not be passed to another. In this moment, the door that has stayed locked against your calling swings open, and no hand of the enemy is permitted to close it again. In this moment, the loneliness that wrapped itself around your nights is broken, and the right souls are being drawn toward the light in you, even as these words are spoken. In this moment, the sickness in your body and the heaviness in your heart are commanded to release their grip, for the one who breaks the pact does not do half a work, and where he restores completely. Receive it. Do not argue with the abundance the way you were trained to argue with every good thing. You were taught to flinch when blessing came near, to brace for the moment it would be snatched away, to distrust joy because joy had always been the prelude to loss. But that was the pact speaking, and the pact is broken. The new covenant written for you does not follow the old pattern. When the freed prisoner walked out of that cell, he did not walk into a wilderness. He walked into a house where others were gathered, waiting, praying, and though they could scarcely believe he stood among them, he was real. He was free. He was restored to his place. And so it will be for you. The people, the provision, the purpose you thought were forever beyond your reach are being restored to their place in your life, and you will stand one day among your own answered prayers and scarcely believe that the night of iron ever happened at all. But do not be surprised, beloved, if in this very hour of your unbinding the shadow makes its loudest noise. A defeated force is never more dangerous than in the moment it realizes it has lost. When those chains fell in the prison, the enemy of that man did not vanish quietly. By morning there was uproar and searching and rage, because captors do not surrender their prisoners with grace. And so if in the coming days the pressure seems to rise, if doubt whispers louder than ever that nothing has changed, if some final storm gathers on your horizon just when you dared to hope, do not be shaken, and do not mistake it for the return of the chain. The loudest screaming in the great hall never came from the sword. It came from the accuser watching his documents turn to ash. The rage of a defeated enemy is not evidence of his strength. It is the sound of his ruin. Your breakthrough may arrive dressed as your hardest hour, and the death throes of the old bondage may look for a moment like its resurrection. Hold the inner witness. Trust the quiet that has settled in your depths. The verdict has already been rendered, and no amount of noise from a defeated foe can overturn what the throne has spoken. And I would have you understand the depth of what your freedom means, for it is larger than your own life. When a chosen soul is unbound, heaven does not gain merely one more free heart. Heaven gains a doorway through which light will pour into every life that soul touches. You were never bound for a small reason. The enemy does not chain the harmless. He chains the ones whose freedom would cost him the most, the ones whose light, once awakened, would set other captives free. Think of it. The very intensity of the war fought over you is the truest measure of the destiny hidden within you. Ordinary lives are not besieged like this. If the shadow spent generations building a chain around your bloodline, It was because it feared what your bloodline set free would do. You are not the end of the rescue. You are the beginning of a rescue that will move through you into others. For the chosen are made rivers and not pools, and the water that fills you was always meant to flow. So let the knowing rise in you until it becomes unshakable. You are not the same soul who first began to listen. The weight that sat on your shoulders like a coat you forgot you were wearing is sliding off even now. The ache that you mistook for your own nature is being revealed as a thief that was never you at all. In the deepest room of your heart, the one you walled away, light is pouring in, and the grief that lived there is being carried out. The chains that held your wrists in the prison of your years are loosening finger by finger, and though the iron is falling in the unseen before your eyes can confirm it, your spirit already hears the sound of it striking the ground. You are being unbound, and the gate before you is already beginning to swing open into a night that leads at last toward the dawn. And do not think the ache I named a moment ago has been fully emptied, for grief hides in deeper rooms than we admit, and there is a layer beneath the layer you have already let the light touch. You have grieved the things that were taken, yes, but have you grieved the person you might have become had the chain never been forged? Somewhere within you lives the unlived life, the version of you that walked through the doors that were slammed, that spoke the words fear silenced, that loved without flinching and built without apology. You have mourned that hidden self quietly, without even knowing its name, feeling only a strange homesickness for a life you never got to live. That mourning ends tonight, for the sword does not only cut the chain that holds your present, it reaches back to redeem the years and forward to restore the self that was stolen before it could be born. And so let me carry you into another story, kept across the ages for a soul exactly like yours. There was a woman who for 18 long years had been bent low, her spine curved toward the ground by a spirit of infirmity, unable to lift herself, unable to look up into the faces of those around her, condemned to see only dust and feet and the narrow patch of earth beneath her. 18 years she carried a weight that folded her body in half, and the world had long since stopped expecting her to stand. She had learned to live bowed. She had learned to call the bending normal, the way you learned to call your sorrow your personality. And then one day the light passed near her, and it did not wait for her to ask. It saw her, truly saw her, the way I see you now, and it spoke over her a single sentence that shattered 18 years in an instant. Woman, you are loosed from your infirmity. And a hand touched her, and immediately she was made straight. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades she lifted her eyes and stood upright and looked into the light that had freed her.